Three. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Royal We Fellowship family. It's good to see you here this morning. And I'm excited about today's message. We are going to be in Genesis chapter 40. But for those of you who are new to Royal We Fellowship, welcome. Shabbat Shalom. And we're happy that you're here. A couple of things just for you to know before we get started. If you would like to be an ongoing supporter of Royal We Fellowship, you can do so in the link down below. There is options to go to PayPal. Any support is inspired, not required in any way, shape, or form. But we are in the book of Genesis right now. We are going to be in Genesis chapter 40. And also, down below in the description box are links to the other Royal We channels, as well as other opportunities. There's Royal We Live Chat, and there's also other things to be involved with, right? And for those of you who don't follow on Instagram, follow me on Instagram as well, and all kinds of that stuff. So we're going to dive right into this. Genesis chapter 40, we're following along in the story of Joseph. Let's go ahead and open up in prayer and then get to it. Our Father, who art in heaven, how holy is your name. Your kingdom will come and your will shall be done here on this earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day and each and every day our daily bread, and forgive us of our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from the evil that's in this world. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And everybody says, Amen. And yes, there is, in fact, evil in this world. Is there not? I will go ahead and give a couple of minutes for some people to come on. And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Very good to see you. So for those of you who are just now joining in, we're in Genesis chapter 40. We're continuing on with our story of Joseph. Now, up to this point, Joseph has really had a difficult time, has he not? He was sold into slavery by his brothers. His brothers actually plotted to kill him. This is an indication of what narcissism in this world, just how dangerous it is, and especially for those of us who think that, we have to be attached to family. We are supposed to have this tight relationship with family. I struggled with this concept myself because the narcissistic abuse that I've endured in life, in fact, for a lot of us, the majority of the narcissistic abuse that you and I endure in our lives is from our own siblings, is from our own family members. Many of us, it's from our parents, it's from our brothers, it's our sisters. It's because of the hierarchy dynamic that creates and feeds into this contesting lifestyle where you contest with each other, where everything is a contest. And as a result, there's lots of fighting. Who's better? Who's this? Who's that? And many families don't know how to get that under control. Narcissistic parents actually like that, and they use it to establish different roles. The golden child, the scapegoat of the family. Who's going to be the tough one? Who's going to sweep things under the rug? And so we see that Joseph, in a lot of ways, comes from this type of dynamic with his brothers. Okay? His brothers were definitely in this place where they formed their clique. They formed their tribe, if you will. And Joseph, being the youngest brother, who was actually of a different mother as well, was the outcast. He was the outcast. He was the scapegoat within that his brother's dynamic. They hated him because he was ambitious. He had dreams. He had promise, and he was also favored by the father. And we talked about that. As a result, this dynamic that we all know all too well of narcissism, that's uncontrollable, that gets uncontained, starts to become hostile and violent. Joseph's brothers plotted to kill him, but instead they sold him into slavery, and they lied to their father, saying that he was mauled by an animal. They took his robe, dipped it in some goat's blood, and said, "We think this is what happened to your son, Joseph." And so now we're picking up where Joseph has already been to Egypt. Now, watch this. If that wasn't bad enough being rejected by your family, Joseph goes into a situation where he is serving Potiphar's wife, serving Potiphar rather, but Potiphar's wife is there, and Joseph is young, and Potiphar's wife takes a sexual liking to Joseph. She thinks he's hot. She wants a piece of that action. Joseph says no. Now, Joseph, in his integrity, who answers to a higher power, said no, because the reason he said no is because I don't want to sin against God. He realizes and recognizes that no matter where he's at in life, that God is the one who puts him in that position. Joseph is starting to gain this understanding and therefore able to remain humble. Even being the servant to the second in command of Egypt, Joseph has an understanding. My brothers sold me into slavery. The reason I'm finding favor is because God is with me. And so when Potiphar's wife seduces him and gives him this option, hey, Joseph, would you like to have a piece of this cougar Egyptian woman? I'm here for you, baby, right? Joseph's response is, I'm understanding something here. God is the only reason that I'm allowed to even be here and that I'm finding favor in your house. We talked a little bit about success, and I talked about it on the Organic Royal We channel. And success is not how much money you have in the bank. Success is not how many cars you have. Success is not how much property you own. This is what American culture, and this is what Tai Lopez, and this is what Grant Cardone wants you to know, right? But success starts first with your wisdom, your stature, and from your stature, which is your ability to do things, your favor. If you have these things, wisdom, stature, and favor, you can be successful wherever you go. So Joseph, having wisdom, stature, and favor, right? And again, Jesus had the same type of success. Jesus wasn't rich. Jesus wasn't wealthy. Jesus in the New Testament didn't have cars and all the horses. In fact, Jesus said, I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a bed. I don't have a bathroom to use, right? So what made Jesus so successful? Wisdom, and this is what he's trying to show us, wisdom, stature, and then favor. And then obviously this competes in the world of you got to have something to be successful. There's nothing more than hateful and resentful than a rich person who has spent their life chasing money, buying cars, buying property, this and that. There's nothing more hateful than one of those guys or gals looking at somebody who has more favor just by being wise, having stature, and having favor. They hate that. They look at all their possessions and say, that's not fair. How come people like you just as much as me when I've got all this stuff? And therefore they try to put them down. This was the case with Jesus. This is why the priests, the Sadducees, the Pharisees hated Jesus, because the Pharisees, Sadducees worked their lives to earn all their gold and glitz and glamour that they wore. Jesus comes around with nothing, looking homely, but with wisdom, talking to the people, touching their hearts, and they hated that. They hated that because they live in a world that they believe the system of the world is that if you don't have gold chain necklaces to show your worth, then you have none. We live much in that world today, do we not? Of course we do. Nothing new is under the sun. Nothing has changed. Now, I digressed a little. Back onto the topic of where Joseph is. Joseph experienced some time in that wealthy lifestyle. He found success and favor because of his wisdom, his ability to do things, his humble ability because he was a slave, and also he found favor. Out of this, he found success within Potiphar's house. And Potiphar's wife wanted to sleep with him. He said, no, because God is what is giving me this favor. My wisdom comes from God. My desire to have stature comes from God. My finding favor is from God. He didn't want to sin against God. Potiphar's wife got angry, threw him in jail, and this is where we're going to pick up today. Joseph is back in jail, in prison. He's tasted some of the sweet life, folks. He went from being a slave, he went from being sold into slavery from his brothers, being rejected by his brothers, into being Potiphar's house, mansion in Egypt, the second in command. And I think that we have a big, gross misunderstanding of what it was like in ancient Egypt. Now, we're all taught and raised to believe that the Egyptians were people running around in diapers with ropes and pulleys and, and then big headgear, right? We know from the ancient literature that that's not true. Egypt was, in fact, very technological. They were very good. They were very razzle dazzle. It was, in fact, like the Las Vegas of the world. We don't know to what extent they had greatness because a lot of it has been buried, destroyed underwater, under flood. But they're still to this day discovering new things about ancient Egypt, about the technology that they use. There are artifacts that they are finding that show technological advancement. Why am I telling you this? Is because they had people and positions back then that we don't even really have anymore. For example, they had cupbearers for the prince of Egypt, not the prince, but the Pharaoh of Egypt. Cupbearers, master bakers, and the cupbearer and master baker are usually only in castles, right? Cupbearer serves drinks, wines, beers. Yes, Egyptians had wines and beers and cupbearers to test it before it went to the Pharaoh. Bakers, chief bakers. What's a chief baker? Chief bakers oversee not only the food that's prepared in castles, but a chief baker maintains the equipment and all of the technology used to make the food. Yes, they had all of this in ancient Egypt. Otherwise, they would have no need for a chief baker or a cupbearer. Okay, so they had these positions, they had these ranks in ancient Egypt because ancient Egypt had a lot of stuff going on. And so these two people, cupbearer and the chief baker, are an interesting part of today's story. Joseph is back in jail now after Potiphar's wife lied because she didn't get what she wants. Chapter 40 says this, Genesis chapter 40. You can read along with me. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. So we can start to see in Egypt how there was a huge infrastructure. They not only had the castles, the cupbearers, the bakers, the pyramids is all we see that's left of Egypt, but it was a flourishing society with castles, with the king, with the pharaohs, with prisons, all kinds of stuff. We're not talking about little mud huts, all right? This was a serious Egypt. Ancient Egypt was a serious place. It was a serious infrastructure. It was a world power. It was the Americas of the day. Huge, right? And so Joseph gets thrown into the prison. Joseph has already been in prison, and we don't know how long he has been there. It could have been 5, 6, 7 years had gone by. There's a lot of estimation that Joseph altogether spent 12 to 14 years in prison from the false accusations of Potiphar's wife. And so now at this point, we see the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. It's important to understand the time frame as well. We know that Joseph had enough time to gain a reputation and to use his wisdom and his stature to find favor in prison. This oftentimes takes time. And time is another thing I want to hit on before we finish in this message, because we do need time. We are in a hurry. We feel like if we are not impressing people in a hurry, then we're going to miss out on an opportunity. We feel like everything is such a rush. It's the biggest lie in Western culture, is that we've got to be in a hurry. We've got to be here. We've got to be there. If there's anything that we can learn, is that time really evolves you into who you are called to be. We need to relax on the time. Joseph was thrown into prison. It could have been 7 to 10 years before we even get to this spot. 7 to 10 years to think about the cruelty and the unfairness that he has endured, being thrown away by his brothers. Keep in mind that he went straight from being sold into slavery to Potiphar's house. I believe that one of the reasons that he needed to go and spend some time in solitude in order to be what God called Joseph to be is he needed that prison time in order to be in solitude, to process the anger, the resentments, the bitterness of his brothers selling him into slavery. Make no mistake about it, people. When you experience narcissistic abuse, when your family rejects you, when they abandon you, when people hurt you, when your spouses leave you, You need time in isolation. You need time to heal. Too often we get in a hurry and we jump into another relationship and we band-aid the pain. We try to find comfort in this new position. Joseph was at risk of that. Going into Potiphar's house, becoming the favorite new uh, uh, I don't want to say slave, helper in Potiphar's house could have been a band-aid as he was growing in popularity, and he could have found his comfort in that as opposed to healing from the drama and the traumatic experience caused by his brothers. So Joseph was thrown into prison. And now at this point in time, 5, 6, 7 years have gone by. Joseph is maturing in his understanding. He's dealing one-on-one with God. We come to this place now where the chief cupbearer and the chief baker who offended the Pharaoh are thrown in the same prison now where Joseph is. After they had been in custody, this is verse 5. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, were being held in prison. They had dreams the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now, keep in mind that Joseph had already grown in favor in the prison, and so the captain of the guard assigned the cupbearer and the cupbearer and the chief baker to Joseph. The prison ward, excuse me, the prison ward, if you will, assigned Joseph to watch over these people. All right. So Joseph was already gaining a lot of favor in prison. He was practically working there more than, at this point, more than just being a prisoner. Right. And so the cupbearer and the chief baker had dreams that night. In verse 6, chapter 40, verse 6, it says, when Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. They were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, why do you look so sad today? Now, this is the part where we need to pay attention. And the title of this message is Paying Attention. Because when we are put in a place of authority, there's a reason why Joseph was put in this place where he was over the cupbearer and the baker. This was the area where he needed to pay attention. And look at how much he paid attention. He paid attention to their facial expressions. He saw that they were sad. This act of paying attention that Joseph did for this individual is what led to Joseph eventually being released. Had Joseph not paid attention to the people he was responsible for, he would never have asked them about their dreams, interpreted them, and then been able to be released. One of the things we need to watch out for in our lives, and this is important, is you and I have this gift that Joseph has. It's the gift of wisdom, stature, and also finding favor with that. We like to call it empathy. We like to call it empath abilities. You know that thing where you can read the room, where you can see there's something wrong with people, right? We've talked about this in the past, and oftentimes we feel like it's our responsibility to go and make sure someone's okay. And in the worst case scenario, you and I run the risk of getting too involved with people who have bad things going on in their lives. A lot of you, myself included, got wrapped up in narcissistic abuse because we overshot our boundaries by being too empathetic with people who have bad things and bad dealings and shady business going on in their own personal lives, and we get too involved, and then we become that nurturing person that empaths like to be. We start to nurture them, and then we get too close, and before you know it, you're enmeshed. All right? Understand that you have this gift to be attentive, to be understanding. And Joseph, all Joseph simply did was ask them, what's going on? I see that you're sad. And in verse 8, they answered Joseph. We both had dreams, they answered, but there is no one to interpret them. Joseph said, basically, I'm an empath. I'll give it a shot. Right? This is something that you and I can do without getting enmeshed, without becoming best friends, without becoming lovers, without becoming coffee date friends. We need to stop thinking that because we use our empathic abilities on people, that means we have to instantly be family, be besties, be intimate with one another. No. You can use your skills as an empath simply by just saying, hey, what's going on? Is there something I can help? Okay. No, you good? Okay. All right. Bye. Deuces, peace out. Joseph did just this. We both had dreams, they answered, but no one is there to interpret them. Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. So Joseph is also acknowledging, hey, Joseph's not trying to draw attention to himself, but he's saying, I see you, I see you're down, I see you're sad. Interpretations belong to God, perhaps I can help. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream, verse 9. He said to him, in my dreams I saw a vine in front of me, and the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand. Joseph says in verse 12, this is what it means, Joseph said. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to when you were his cupbearer. So in other words, Joseph is saying, in your dream, the Pharaoh is going to restore you to your position. And this is what Joseph added. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. Joseph saying, he acknowledges right then and there, I was supposed to pay attention to this. I was supposed to have this conversation with you. You're going to be released. When you're released, remember me. Remember this moment. This is what Joseph is saying. Remember me in this moment of using wisdom, stature, and having favor. Joseph has nothing else. He's not saying, remember me, I'm rich, I'm wealthy, I'm this. Remember me, I'm somebody who is attentive to your needs. I have wisdom. I'll use wisdom. I'll use my gifts of empathy. Remember me. He's not saying, let's be best friends. He's not saying, take me with you. He's just saying, remember me. That's it. All right. After that, when the chief baker, verse 16, saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, this is the baker now talking, I too had a dream. On my head there were baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Now this is not such a good dream interpretation, but it's also important that the cupbearer also witnessed this. Verse 18 says, this is what it means, Joseph said. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, bring you out of prison as well. But then he will impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh. In other words, Joseph is telling him your dream is interpreted as you are going to be punished. You are going to be martyred. You are going to be made an example out of. Whatever the baker's offense was to Pharaoh, whatever the baker did to offend the king of Egypt is about to exact his revenge, exact punishment on the baker. This is what we get out of this dream interpretation. Now, verse 20 says, on the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday. He gave a feast for all of his officials. He did lift up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he had the chief baker impaled, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. And then verse 23, it says, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Now, it's important to understand that the chief cupbearer forgot him at that moment. But look at all that's going on. It's a very intense day. I don't blame the cupbearer for staying silent. He just watched the chief baker, the person that he knew, get impaled, get punished, be tortured because of whatever went on. And so at the moment, the chief cupbearer did forget about Joseph, didn't run to the Pharaoh and say, oh my gosh, this guy in prison, Joseph, said this exact thing would happen. He didn't do that yet. But that is okay, because there's going to come a point in time as we get into the later chapters where we're going to see that the opportunity does arise where the chief cupbearer does come forward and tell the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, I know somebody who can help you. He's in prison, right? And this is why it is so important that we pay attention, that wherever we are in life, that we're not simply doing things to try to earn necessarily friendships, bonding. We're not trying to have intimacy. We're not trying to get these things. We're simply living out our empathic abilities, the gifts that God has given us. Whether it's a gift of wisdom, discernment, encouragement, speaking, whatever it is, because we all have gifts and we use these things. No matter where we're at, in high places, as Joseph used it when he was serving Potiphar, and in low places, even if you are in prison, where Joseph was in prison. Pay attention. And that's the point of this message, because when you pay attention, you can act on it. Not only pay attention, but always check your level of how you are bonding. Paying attention and being there for people is not about having a bonding moment necessarily. It's not about having an intimate moment necessarily. We have to be careful not to over-emotionalize these things. Notice that Joseph was able to interpret these dreams by paying attention to the people he was responsible for, and he was over. But he did not emotionally get attached to either one of them. He did say, remember me when you find favor. But notice he wasn't emotionally telling the baker what was going to happen to him. He wasn't all emotional. Doesn't say they hugged and cried together. Joseph kept his distance from whatever problems the baker was having in his life. Joseph's interest was not in what the baker did to deserve whatever he did. Joseph's responsibility was simply to use the gifts that he had to share with the baker the dream. Does this make sense? Oftentimes you and I, you realize that you have an empathic ability. You have an ability to be there for somebody. But too often when we get close to people, we use this ability and we have a hard time stepping away and separating ourselves from the transaction and the ability that we just used. We have a hard time letting go. We feel like we form this bond, and a lot of this starts very bad relationships with people we have no business being with, where instead we should just come together for a moment, touch that person's life in a way that helps them understand something, and then step away. Leave. Let them be. Let them experience life how they're going to experience life. But a lot of this comes from paying attention. Don't be afraid to use your abilities with people you are over. Over meaning responsible for. And with that, I want to thank you. We'll wrap up today's message. And I hope that it was something that's inspiring for you wherever you are at, whether you are in your palace or you feel like you are in prison right now. You can still have success in either place. Another interesting aspect of the story is to look at the fact that Joseph was successful either way. It didn't matter if Joseph was in the palace with Potiphar or if Joseph was in prison. He was still the same Joseph. He still was favored, highly favored, and you could be highly favored too. Don't think for a minute that because a narcissistic family has kicked you out of their palace that you cannot find favor in the prison and where you feel like you're living right now. Because you absolutely can. And you could do great things to get out of that prison, because your success will follow you if you stay true to who you are. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Shabbat Shalom. Have a blessed weekend, everybody. And next Saturday, this is important. There will be no Royal We Fellowship next Saturday. I will make sure to put a notification up. It won't be live anyways, because next Saturday I will be rappelling down the 19 stories. All right. Next Saturday is the big rappel. That's the big leap of faith for me. I'm going to be going down the side of the hotel. What I may do instead is pre-record the chapter 41 and have it scheduled to play on this channel at 9 o'clock a.m. So you're welcome to do that. I will pre-record it and have it available. But I won't be live. I will be at the Four Seasons Hotel in St. Louis, rappelling down the building next Saturday. All right. So just to give you a heads up on that, have a blessed weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you would like to be a supporter of Royal We Fellowship, you could do so. There's all kinds of links down below. We can find PayPal. Again, it's not required, but if you are inspired to help this keep going forward, please do. All right. Thank you all so much. Watch out for videos. There will be videos all week long on the Royal We channel. And I look forward to being back with you live. Not this Saturday, not next Saturday because I'll be rappelling, but the Saturday after I'll be live. And if there's any of you who have ideas of how you feel Royal We Fellowship could be better, could be brought to you better, things that you would like to see, please go ahead and include that as well. Leave me comments, send me an email, join me on Facebook, however you can reach out to me. All right. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Shabbat shalom. Be blessed.